Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. We're going to give it about one more minute for some folks to join in, and then we're going to get started. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. A few folks may still trickle in, but we can go ahead and get started. So, as you probably saw in the event description, this uh, event is called EVs Me, a discussion on the growing market for electric vehicles. My name is Connor, and I'm a program manager at Fourth. I'll get into a little bit more of who we are, but we are putting this event on with the City of San Antonio's Sustainability Department and their climate initiative and electric vehicle San Antonio. So, a quick overview of who Fourth is. We're a nonprofit trade association. We're based in Portland, Oregon. And we have several different member groups, including automakers, electric utilities, and local governments. And we've been working with the City of San Antonio as part of the American Climate Cities Challenge for the last couple of years. Um, so looking forward to speak with you all today about electric transportation. We have a great lineup of panelists today, which sounds kind of weird to say since I'm the first person speaking, but excluding myself, I'll be kicking things off with an overview of electric vehicles. And then we have Harley Hubbard, who is the Sustainable Transportation Manager at the City of San Antonio in the Sustainability Department. And then we have Alan Montemeyer, who is an EV owner and enthusiast to bring his own experience. And then we also have Drew Higgins, who is another EV owner, and then also is the Senior Director of Products and Services at CPS Energy. So we have a couple different perspectives being brought in today to talk about their experiences and hopefully get a nice holistic view of electric vehicles for you all. So to kick things off, why should we care about electric vehicles? There's several different reasons. And the first being, cleaner air and environmental energy. There's a lot of different estimates out there, but some showing 10,000 and social benefits due to improved air quality when you consider things like health and medical spending. Um, Additionally, energy dollars stay local. Electricity is produced domestically, so less dependence on foreign oil. Transporting energy can rely on your local companies like CPS. Fighting climate change, again, bringing in that less greenhouse gas emissions, less CO2, which we'll go into a bit deeper a little later on. Additionally, it supports renewable energy. And then cheaper operations of vehicles. So while vehicles often have a little bit of a higher price at the beginning, over time you'll see that with cheaper fuel, less maintenance, and financial incentives, you can really save money both personally and as a fleet with electric vehicles. So before we get into the more elaborate details of those, let's first set the foundation. What is an electric vehicle? Um, so there are two primary types. We refer to electric vehicles as vehicles that have a battery, and those can be broken down into either battery electric or plug-in hybrid electric. So battery electric vehicles are 100% electric. They have no gas tank. The only way to fuel them is to plug them in. Some examples of that are the Chevy Bolt, the Volkswagen e-Golf, the Hyundai Kona, and probably the most famous being the Tesla models, including the Model 3 pictured here. We also have the plug-in hybrid vehicle, which uses both electric and gasoline. Um, Most have an electric-only model, which means that they can go in some amount of distance in only electric mode. Um, this is the biggest difference between a traditional hybrid, where a lot of people think about the Toyota Prius. The difference there is primarily the gasoline engine and the electric motor have to work together. It can never run in electric-only mode, and you always have to put gasoline in it to fuel it. There is no plug. So just calling that out, that today we'll only be talking about vehicles which do have a plug and can run exclusively on electricity, at least some of the time. So kind of again, like why should we care? Because automakers care is one reason. Most of, if not all of the major automakers have put out a whole plethora of commitments to creating electric vehicles. Just calling out some of them here: Audi 20 new EV models by 2025, Ford 40 EVs by 2020, Hyundai 44 EV models by 2025, Volkswagen $84 billion in EV research and development. These are some big numbers being thrown out by the automakers, showing that it isn't just Tesla that is producing electric vehicles. This is really a changing of the tides, and automakers are starting to take this very seriously. And that's not including that we have Rivian, Tesla, Cybertruck, and medium heavy duty vehicles also in use, and more on the way. And speaking of that, not just light duty, um, starting to become more and more in use are transit buses that are electric, school buses. There's a lot of yard applications these days with electric forklifts or delivery trucks, haulers, and even some large scale vehicles or heavy duty like garbage trucks. So this is also an exciting space to consider, that it isn't just small passenger cars. There's also a whole transportation economy that is starting to be built around um, electric transportation. One big headline that you may have seen last year is that Amazon committed to buying 100,000 electric vans from a new startup called Rivian. So big companies like Amazon are committed to electrifying a lot of their operations as well. And also, it's not just businesses, it's also cities. So there are tons of examples of this, but just calling out a few, that it is happening now, and cities are starting to electrify their fleets where it makes sense. Um, Through Smart Columbus, the city of Columbus in Ohio has procured over 200 electric vehicles. Just this year, the city of Portland is procuring 60 EV sedans, increasing their total light duty fleet percentage to 30%. The city of Atlanta already has 60 EVs in use. LA is, a leader, which isn't that surprising, but already have adopted 400 electric vehicles in the last 3 years. And then we also have some commitments like Charlotte to electrify or have zero emissions in all their fleet by 2030. And another cool initiative that's going on is the Climate Mayors Electric Vehicle Purchasing Collaborative, which has close to 450 mayors already signed up. And this is basically a turnkey solution for fleets of cities to help do the math and figure out the electric vehicles that make sense, use group buy programs, and try to get better deals on electric vehicles and make that transition as easy as possible. So now getting back into kind of the benefits that we've talked about the industry a little bit. So the first off, EVs are cleaner than gasoline engine. I really like this graph because it kind of shows, based on your electric grid of your area, what is the um, equivalent gasoline miles per gallon your vehicle would need to get to equal that of an electric vehicle, while taking in um, the entire emissions from creating that vehicle through its operations. And you can see here in like the Texas area, that's around 68 miles per gallon, which is far ahead of the national average of around 25 miles per gallon for the average car. So pretty much anywhere you are in the U.S. is better than that average. And yeah, you can see here in the San Antonio area that definitely holds true as well. So additionally, EVs are cheaper to drive than gasoline vehicles due to fuel prices. So when I ran this is a tool produced by the Department of Energy, basically comparing the price that it takes to drive the same amount of distance using gasoline or using electricity, which they basically have just come up with an e-gallon as the comparison. So it's about 40% cheaper. Obviously that fluctuates with the price of electricity or gasoline, but it holds pretty true. Other places in the country, depending on the grid, this is even a bigger comparison, but that's what it is in Texas. And additionally, electric vehicles are cheaper to maintain than gasoline. On average, a couple studies have shown that EV owners save around $800 per year in maintenance costs, and a lot of this goes to no oil changes, reduced maintenance. There's no air filters, timing belts, spark plugs. Utilizing regenerative braking, that makes the brakes last a lot longer. I've heard anecdotally people that are still driving 2012 Nissan Leafs who have never had to get their brakes changed. So these are just several examples. Um, and then the big one that I like is electric motors have about 30 moving parts compared to over 200 in a gasoline engine. So there's just a lot less parts to break down and a lot of things that will have to be replaced over time. They're simpler, and all that adds up through operations. And additionally, there are financial savings you can get on your purchase. There's the federal tax credit, which allows up to $7,500 off purchase or lease of a new plug-in electric vehicle. And that depends on a few scenarios, battery size and your income. But if you qualify for those, um, you can qualify for that incentive. I should note that a few automakers are no longer qualified just because of the way the legislation was passed, and that includes Tesla and GM, but every other auto manufacturer still qualifies for that discount. Additionally, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has a light duty program which electric vehicles qualify for. So if you buy a vehicle or lease, you can fill out an application and receive up to $2,500 off. And additionally, electric utilities often have savings you can get, whether that's on charging infrastructure or just public charging around town. So check with your local utility CPS for some additional um, materials on that. And also, EVs are just fun to drive. One thing we do at Fourth is we like to do ride and drives, because when people get behind the wheel of an electric vehicle, a lot of times they just, a lot of the myths they may have about them are instantly shot. Some people think they're slow, they don't have the power, they're like RC cars, but really they are fun to drive. They have instant torque and instant energy to the wheels, which gasoline engines do not have. There's no transmission that they have to work through, so they're fun. The way the gravity packs are in the cars keeps their center of gravity low, so the handling is very tight and responsive. And then also they're quiet. Ultimately, you don't really realize how loud your car is until you're having a conversation in a vehicle that has no engine noise. It really is how, in my opinion, how cars should be and will be in the future. So there's just a few of the advantages of actually driving them. Question we get a lot is, what about the batteries? They do have, some heavy metals in there, which should should not be thrown away for what it is. But there are also a lot of studies out there kind of showcasing those life cycle emissions between manufacturing an electric vehicle, including the battery through its lifetime compared to a gasoline engine. And this is one study that shows over a 50% reduction in emissions comparing equivalent or comparable electric and gasoline cars. So if global emissions is something that you're considered as important and you want to help solve for, really electric vehicles are a great way to start tackling that. And another question we get with batteries is people are sometimes worried about like deterioration. Um, why this was more of a concern at the beginning when EVs were still becoming, still evolving very readily, kind of in the 2010 through 2012 area. We were seeing as much as a 20% reduction in battery range over um, 5 years. Uh, but actually, with recent models, this is shown to be less than 10% in vehicles after 150,000 miles. So if your vehicle has 300 miles of range, 10% is over 5 years is you know, relatively not that big of an effect these days. And also should be noted that batteries are expensive, but most manufacturers provide EV battery coverage for 8 to 10 years or over 100,000 miles at least. So there should be some peace of mind if you make a vehicle purchase that you will not have to, front the cost of replacing batteries should the worst case scenario happen. So I'm going to pivot gears a little bit, and I'll remind anybody to keep um, pinging questions in the chat, and we will be getting to all of those at the end after all of the speakers go. So I'm going to continue on now. So to begin with charging, there are 3 different types of levels. First, we got what we call level 1, which is simply just using a 120-volt outlet. Every electric car will come with one of these plugs. You just plug it into your house, your garage, wherever you got, and you lead it out to your driveway. You can even bring it with you when you travel if you stay in a hotel and find an outside plug. As vehicle batteries get bigger, the applicability of these is the use case starts to change a little bit. But for a lot of people, at my house, we just charge using this. We drive, 20 miles at most a day. So this low trickle charge is plenty for our daily drive. Beyond that, we have level 2. So this uses a 240-volt outlet and then has a little additional hardware. This is kind of what you would see in public settings a lot, parking garages, at workplaces where you're parked for several hours, maybe hotels for overnight. These can get you up to 12 to 40 miles per hour. And additionally, folks that if they do drive more or they feel like they need it, they install these at their house. You can install them outside, in your garage. If you have an extra 240-volt outlet, you're pretty much good to go. Some folks may need to upgrade their panel to kind of have this applicability, but for usually less than $1,000, you can buy and install this level 2 charging, which should alleviate any concerns you have about charging at home. And finally, we have level 3 or DC fast charging, which is essentially the closest equivalent to going to a gas station. A little bit different experience, but you can get up to 80% of your charge in 20 to 40 minutes. This is great for when you're traveling. You can do longer distance. You can stop at a fast charger, grab a bite to eat for 30 minutes, and then get back on your way. More and more of these are going up around the country, which I'll touch on in a little bit. One important thing to know is that currently there are 3 basic prep plugs. There is what's called the CCS, which is kind of the American and European standard. So your Chevy Bolts and Volkswagen vehicles are going to use those. Whereas there's also CHAdeMO, which is primarily used by Nissan. So your Nissan Leaf is going to use that plug. And then there's also Tesla, which has its own plug. So you can kind of think of it as Android and iPhone with chargers. There's kind of like the general, which is the CCS, and then there's the Tesla, which is the um, kind of like the iPhone with their own. So there's kind of a lot going on there, and hopefully this system will be even more simplified in the future. But there is plenty of charging no matter what vehicle you have to get out there to alleviate most folks' concerns. And here's an example of public charging stations in the San Antonio area. The green stations are those level 2 that I mentioned, and then the orange bronze there is fast charging. I know the city is working on getting even more of these stations installed at municipal land throughout the region. And I'll touch on so PlugShare is also one tool that you can use to find charging stations. So if you're traveling or you're just trying to find a station locally, you can use this tool. It's an app or a website. You can find chargers. You can you can see on here, it gives their cost, gives them their access information, gives you an address, and what kind of plugs they have. So this is a great tool for folks that don't have their charging situation completely figured out yet, or you're in a new part of town trying to find a charger. So there are several different tools out there to help do this task. Another one of these tools is ChargeWay. They have a really great trip planning tool. So for example, if you see over here on the left, I've zoomed in from doing a trip from San Antonio to Oklahoma City. It calculates in your stops, where you would need to charge, using an algorithm that is most convenient and efficient. So it's letting you know that about 9.5 hours, you'll be able to make that trip with taking 3 stops. And if you use this app, it would actually tell you exactly how long you would need to stop at each one of those chargers to fill up to get to the next one. And then this tool also has a feature similar to PlugShare that kind of shows available charging stations just generally. And I'll also add that a lot of car companies, especially Tesla, kind of have these features already built into their car. So no external app needed. You just say you need to charge, and then your car will, GPS you right to the station you need to go. So there are definitely options out there, and if you get an electric vehicle, I would recommend downloading a couple different ones and finding the one that works for you. And just one more map to kind of show the spectrum of charging. There are definitely more chargers than what is available here. This graphic is maybe 6 months old now, and then also there are tons of other companies, but Tesla and Electrify America are two of the biggest charging networks out there. So just wanted to compare that. There are still some gaps, especially up in the northern West Midwest area. But for most of the country, it is pretty possible to use major highways and get everywhere you need to go with the electric vehicle technology that is out there right now. And one more transition here. I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to finish up here quickly and pass the torch over. So remember to keep pinging questions if you can. So there are a lot of electric vehicles available in the US. Currently, there are over 50. And I just wanted to highlight a few of those are available. Definitely not going to go through the full extensive list, but going to call out some of our favorites. So the Kia Niro, this is a great car that has both a full electric version, which gets around 240 electric miles, and then it has a PHE plug-in hybrid version, which gets around 26 electric miles. Comes in around 39,000 MSRP. So depending on your needs, if you want to go full electric, if you want to go plug-in hybrid, this is a vehicle that has a few different models available, and is a nice crossover midsize sedan. The Chevy Bolt, keep this one on here because this is a smaller vehicle, but it is kind of the classic first car outside of Tesla to get some substantial over 250 electric miles in that mid 30,000 price range. It's kind of been a classic for the last 4 or 5 years or so. So this is definitely still one to look out for. Nissan Leaf, this is also a classic. This is one of the first, if not the first, readily available electric car in the US in around 2010, 2011. There are two models these days, both full electric. One gets 151 electric miles, and then there's the Plus version, which gets around 226 electric miles. And that'll run you about 30,000 for the base model and around 35,000 for the full Leaf Plus model. And we'd be remiss to not talk about the Model 3, which Tesla really does kind of set the standard for quality in electric cars right now. And this is quickly changing as more models and car companies get on board. But starting with the base model at around 38,000, you can get a Tesla, which I can attest is a great vehicle. And talk about one more PHEV that kind of fits in a different use case is the Mitsubishi Outlander. This is a big, more full-size SUV, which gets around 22 electric miles. And this has a higher towing capacity, has all-wheel drive. So this is really a great vehicle for a larger family, folks that kind of want to get outdoors and have a vehicle that, they can do their commute in all electric, but you still need to make extended camping trips or get off-road. This is a vehicle that really fits kind of in that middle ground area. And then just to highlight a few other vehicles that are coming soon to be excited about. The Rivian R1T. The electric truck space is still one that there's been a lot of announcements as of recent, but it really hasn't been completely tapped yet. So this is one vehicle that I'm excited for. It's going to get somewhere between 250 and 500 electric miles. Getting up there at 78,000, but it is, in my opinion, a good-looking truck, and hopefully will set a new standard in the electric truck market to go with the sedan and crossover market that has been popular in the last several years. And another vehicle that raised a lot of eyebrows was the Tesla Cybertruck. Probably will see this in production sometime next year. So a lot of excitement over this one. Pretty funky design, pretty heavy duty. So excited to see how this one actually turns out in production. But another truck that is on the way. The Ford Mustang Mach-E is another really exciting all-electric vehicle. Ford putting the Mustang stamp on an electric vehicle and kind of an electric vehicle crossover at that. Also raised some eyebrows, but it's cool to see them committing in this market as well. And everything I've heard about this vehicle has been super positive so far. So excited in 2021 when we can finally drive it ourselves. And personally, probably my favorite coming up is the Toyota RAV4 Prime. This should be hitting dealers sometime in the next couple of months. It has 42 electric miles and is actually rated to have the most horsepower and most torque of any RAV4 ever. So it kind of sticks with the modern shape and design of the recent RAV4s, but adds the plug and some full electric miles. So another one to be on the lookout for. And here's one that was announced a while ago, but finally should be hitting markets in 2022. And this is Volkswagen bringing kind of back their old microbus, but turning into an electric. And you can see here fitted out with surfer garb. So just there's some excitement in the space and a lot of options out there coming up. So definitely things to consider. And one last slides I wanted to touch on was used EVs. We've mostly talked about new EVs so far, and those price I listed will refer to that. And to be honest, those prices are up there, but that's not just electric vehicles. The prices for new vehicles in general are just high. Most people, over 50% of the U.S. buys used cars. So I would be remiss to not mention the used EV market a little bit. EVs, as they are, have not been around as long as gasoline vehicles. There isn't as many options yet, but that is changing as more and more folks buy EVs and sell and buy new. So I just wanted to highlight the deals. So here's just a picture of a Nissan Leaf and a BMW i3. Both electric cars. Both you can see here have low miles. This Leaf here has less than 16,000 miles for 12K, and this i3 also less than 12K. with relatively lower miles. So both are great cars. They are full electric, get the job done, but they're in a bit more of an affordable range than some of those new vehicles that are coming out today. And then a couple more pictures of that. Here's a Chevy Bolt electric vehicle, and then the Chevy Volt, which is a plug-in hybrid. And you can see here a little bit higher than those other two, but these are some low-mile vehicles that offer a bit more affordable pricing as well. And all of these screenshots were from dealerships in the San Antonio area. So there are some options out there for you folks that are in San Antonio locally. Then there are also a few websites like Carvana and Auto Trader, which you can find used EVs outside of your area, where they can work out shipping, transportation, or other options there. Great, so that is wrapping up my my part of the presentation, and I've seen some questions come in, but I haven't been able to look at those yet. So I'll be reviewing those while the other speakers start to go, and we'll have around 10-15 minutes at the end to huddle on questions. So we'll be getting to those. Here's my email and our website, so please check that out. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. And now I will let Harley, who is our representative for the city of San Antonio, to give some updates there.
All right. Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like Connor said, my name is Harley Hubbard. I am the Sustainable Transportation Manager for the Office of Sustainability. I've been with the city for a little bit. Before my time at Sustainability, I was actually at Aviation for a little bit, and I even spent some time at Animal Care Services. I'm going to try to just give you guys an idea of some of the electric mobility initiatives we have going on. We do have a lot going on in this space. That's just going to be a brief overview so we can get to the fun stuff, which is going to be the EV owner experience. So why do we, as the city, care about electric mobility? Why is it something that we have spent a lot of time on? Why is it what my job does? The real goal here is greenhouse gas reduction. These are two screen grabs from the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that was passed almost a year ago. You can see both our municipal and community greenhouse gas emissions. As far as our municipal transportation emissions, 65% of those emissions were because of city-owned vehicles, while 35% were streetlight and traffic signals. We do have a goal of complete carbon neutrality by 2050, which means in order to stay on track, we need to meet a 41% reduction by 2030 and a 71% reduction by 2040. We did have a slight reduction between 2014 and 2016 in greenhouse gas emissions while our population rose. So we're on a great track. We just need to keep that momentum going. I mentioned the CAP, the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. We have two strategies in there, plus more related specifically to electric vehicles. The Climate Action Adaptation Plan really believes that the city should be a leader in this space. Municipal strategy number 6, leading by example, convert all passenger vehicles and small trucks to more efficient options by 2025, as well as researching the pilot and electrification of our heavy-duty vehicles, as well as mitigation strategy 7, encourage the acceleration and adoption of transition to clean and more efficient vehicle technologies for the community. I'm going to briefly touch on how we intend on doing that. One of those campaigns and strategies that kind of encompasses the entire program is EVSA, Electric Vehicle San Antonio. This is the branding and logo we try to use for most of our EV-related efforts. At its core, EVSA is a public outreach campaign that looked a little different before COVID than it does now. Right now, we're doing some virtual events like this one. We'll be hosting a virtual Drive Electric Week. At the end of September, we hope to have kind of virtual ride and drive events, give people an idea of what it's like to own an electric vehicle. This program is continuing to be funded by the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant through TCEQ, but we also have some other initiatives that kind of follow this umbrella as well. Connor kind of touched on EV charging before. We really tried to make sure that we have equitable and economic access to charging throughout the city. My friends at the airport manage an awesome EVSE network in their short and long-term garages. If you've been to the airport recently, you can see that those spaces are almost always taken, and it's a great amenity that they have for their passengers. We're trying to make sure that charging is readily available throughout the city for those who either can't or don't have access to home charging. We actually do have an RFP out right now, which Connor mentioned earlier, to get publicly accessible electric vehicle chargers on city-owned property, places like parks, libraries, things like that. That way the public can go ahead and charge their electric vehicle while using city services. Talking a little bit about our green fleet procurement policy, we do have one currently that was developed in 2010 to support Mission Verde with the initial target of a 17% reduction by 2020. We just had some goals, including reducing total cost of ownership, basically all of the perks of electric vehicle ownership, but it needs a revision because it does not align with the CAP plan. So we are in the process of, with some help from a delivery team with representatives across the city, updating the policy to align it not only to the CAP, but also the Ozone Attainment Master Plan. This will allow for opportunities to not only continue to perform job functions, but do them more energy efficiently and economically efficiently, and simplify the procurement process to further incentivize the use of electric vehicles. And like I said, that was just a really brief thing. We do a lot of other EV work as well. Like we have some projects going on to revise code standards for EV and solar readiness. That way it's easier to plug in and use EV chargers later down the construction line. Just wanted to give you guys a brief overview. We're going to pass it along now to two of our EV owners, and they're really going to share their experience of owning an electric vehicle in San Antonio. Here's my contact information if you guys have any questions, and I will also be here for the Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Alan Montemayor. I'm an EV owner here in San Antonio. I'm a native San Antonian and lived here all my life and love San Antonio. I'm honored to be able to do this and speak with you today about EVs. My experience of owning a small electric vehicle. I have a 2014 Mitsubishi i-MiEV, which is a tiny little vehicle. It's a lot of fun to drive. I've owned it about 20 months, and I bought it used. It had about 19,000 miles on it, but I bought it for a very small amount of money, only $4,700. It's a battery electric vehicle, meaning it's all electric. There's no gasoline engine. It only has a range of about 60 miles, which seems low, but I'm retired, and for me, that's just about perfect. I can plug it in at the end of the day, and by the next morning, I'm ready to go about my day and go 60 miles. It's got a small 18 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery, and it's perfect for my daily commuting, and particularly during COVID times right now, when I'm not really going a lot of different places. It's ideal. Backing up a little bit about the power source on our home, about a year ago, we got a solar array on our roof. It's 10 solar panels, about 3.3 kilowatts. I wanted to thank CPS Energy for giving us a rebate on the installation. That made it much easier to do. We've actually been generating more power than we've been consuming on a yearly basis. Some months, like particularly June, July, and August, the air conditioning will use more than we can generate. However, for the rest of the months, we more than make up for it. Why that's significant is that when I had the system installed, we had them put in a system with a inverter, a solar inverter, that incorporates a level 2 EV charger directly into the inverter. That means that we can basically charge directly from the sun, and that's been amazingly inexpensive to operate. So when I charge at home, I can charge either with the 240 volt AC directly from CPS Energy or directly from the sun. A full charge would take about 6 hours, but typically I don't run it all the way down, so it's about 3 to 4 hours for a full charge. If I choose to charge off the 120 volt AC at home, which I rarely do, it would take about 12 hours for a full charge, and typically a typical charge would be 6 to 8 hours. But again, I rarely do that because it's so convenient to plug into the charger, as you can see there. I do charge mostly at night to reduce the CPS Energy peak load. A lot of the power that CPS generates during the night comes from wind power from West Texas. So it's very clean there as well. The maximum charge from CPS Energy, if I were to just pay the electricity rate, would cost about $1.80 to charge my car to go 60 miles. However, when I'm charging off the sun, it's essentially free energy, and makes this into a true zero emission vehicle. Other charging options. I do carry a small 120 volt AC, I call it a Go charger. I've only had to use that once when I was driving out to a friend in the country. There were no other chargers available out there. Citywide, though, there are many different free sites that are available through the charging networks, and a number of commercial sites. The commercial sites are only $1 or $2 to charge, and I have to say that in 20 months, I've only paid for charging twice. I've either charged for free at home or charged for free at different citywide sites. So only having a range of 60 miles, you might ask, well, how do you improve that range? How do you make it do all the things that you would want to do in a day? A lot of times I've learned to use the city streets, the low speed streets, rather than drive on the highway. Actually, I found that initially I thought that was going to take a lot longer to get places, and it doesn't, unless you're going a long distance, which I rarely do. I choose the economy mode in the transmission rather than the power mode or the brake mode. I slow down in advance of red lights. I minimize quick starts and hard braking, try to plan ahead with the driving. I choose a moderate highway speed. So rather than going 65 miles an hour, I might go 55 miles an hour. And I minimize the use of air conditioning and heating. The vehicle does have heated seats. So during the wintertime, I use those extensively, and I found that that's been quite adequate unless it's the coldest days. So trip planning. Trip planning is important when you only have a range of 60 miles. I try to think about where I'm going to be driving during the day, combine trips, have the car appropriately charged the night before, or even do a little bit of opportunity charging if I'm driving somewhere to a meeting that has a plug-in place to plug. Many of the universities around campus, around town, have free charging. EcoCentro, the Central Library. So I would tend to do opportunity charging. But trip planning is important when you have a limited range on your vehicle. I don't find it to be in any way onerous. I find it to be a relatively straightforward process. You get into that mode very quickly, and it's just a lot of fun to drive. So let's talk about maintenance for a while. When I bought this, I did realize that maintenance was going to be quite a bit lower. I didn't really understand how low it was going to be. Basically, for the 20 months that I've had the vehicles, I've replaced tire, wiper blades, and washer fluid, and that's it. There are no air cleaners, no fan belts, no oil, no muffler, none of the things that you would normally associate with maintenance on a car. Interesting story, I did go into a Jiffy Lube to get the car inspected, and at the end of the inspection, the owner called over all the mechanics, and I gave him a brief rundown on the car. At the end of it, after asking all the questions, one of the employees turned to his boss and said, "Boss, we can't sell this guy anything. Brake maintenance is probably going to be virtually zero, if not zero. They say that typically it's going to be at least after 100,000 miles, but truly I've never heard of anybody changing brakes on their electric vehicle." These vehicles have about 1/10 the number of moving parts of an internal combustion engine vehicle. Very little to go wrong. It's a very simple car. And as someone mentioned, the city of San Antonio provides free parking through their hybrid vehicle parking program at any of the metered sites downtown. So there's just a lot of cool perks associated with owning a tiny vehicle like this. It's a 4-door hatchback. The seats fold down for a spacious cargo area. It seats 4 adults easily. It's got heated seats. So in summary, this is a fun vehicle. It's quick at acceleration. It's cute. I get stopped in parking lots and asked to talk about electric vehicles all the time. It's turned me into, frankly, what I call an EV evangelist, where I gush about the benefits of driving this car. It's a lot of fun. It's clean, it's quiet, it's roomy, extremely inexpensive. In fact, I would say it's a no-brainer for me to drive this vehicle. And it's sustainable, which is to me is very important. So thank you for your kind attention today. We'll turn it over to Drew.
Good afternoon. I am going to take a slightly different tact. Full disclaimer, as a CPS Energy employee, I do not endorse one EV over another. However, I do endorse EVs over internal combustion engine vehicles. I currently own a Model 3. However, I have owned other electric vehicles, specifically the Chevy Bolt, and I can tell you many of the best characteristics of EVs are ubiquitous. For this presentation, I'll focus on the three aspects of why EVs and specifically Teslas have been so successful and why it makes such an indelible impact on Tesla owners. There are three aspects that make EVs and the Tesla experience so unique. It's the buying and delivering as well as the owning experience. And while all automobiles have those three components, it really is a differentiator for Tesla. And so I will start with the buying experience. Rather than selling through a traditional dealership model, Tesla sells most of their new cars through the internet. You can go to their site, you can configure it, whether it's Model 3, Model S, Model X, or Model Y, apply for financing, and get an estimate of delivery times all from the Tesla website or the mobile app. There is a secret menu of sorts. If you want like the standard range, it's a $35,000 option, but you have to call to get that. More or less, it's super simple. In fact, you generally scratch your head after the process like, this is it. I'm done. It's fairly amazing, right? There's this expectation setting. Owning a car is a huge investment. Typical household is usually the second biggest expense after housing, and normally it takes a lot of time. Many of the aspects of the experience are also confusing. 6 out of 10 car buyers are undecided from the onset. Tesla removes many of these friction points by standardizing options and packages and prices. There is zero haggling, no go to see the finance manager, it's just the price. Everyone pays the same price, no employee discounts, no holiday specials. This is kind of counter to the expectations that the automobile industry has set. And as a car shoppers, you're usually barraged by a multitude of factors: sticker price, invoice price, sales price, internet price, a host of different incentives, whether or not you qualify those. And unfortunately, the auto industry has historically taken advantage of consumers' lack of knowledge. Tesla has said, you know what, we're going to remove all that. We're going to make one price. We're going to make this simple. We're going to make this akin to a consumer electronic device, and they have. And then, of course, there's the dealerships. Sometimes automakers have competing interests with their franchise dealers, and the customer experience suffers as a result. Once again, this removal of intermediaries between the parent company as well as the owner allows for a better overall experience. Basically, there is none. It's one-to-one. And alignment to retailers is critical, because dealerships generally control the final stage of the car purchase process, and Tesla wants to own that. And I can tell you from experience, it makes a big difference, and I'll explain that in the next slide. So let's move on to the delivery experience. So after you purchase it, you get the vehicle, and most of the time you'll have to wait a few weeks for delivery after you configure it. For new models like the Model Y, it may take a little bit longer, but generally it's fairly quick, right? It's a singular experience. You get the notice that your vehicle is en route to be delivered, and the process really kind of kicks into high gear. If you need to trade in the vehicle or secure financing, is at that point of the process you'll finalize those steps. But upon delivery, the vehicle is required to be paid in full. Like I said, this is kind of like a iPhone-like experience, right? It's just one of those things that you have to kind of go through. But once you do it, you're like, I'm never going back. It's very unique. There's a white glove level of treatment that is afforded to Tesla customers, and this is where I think Tesla has really nailed the experience. The buyer of the vehicle is in charge of the delivery process from beginning to end, and the Tesla delivery representative will take as much time as the customer wants. They will literally spend all day long with you, and they'll make sure the customer's happy. On the side, you'll see this is actually my delivery experience. I brought my daughter. It was very festive. Kind of, the delivery advisor kind of walked us through every aspect that we wanted. We wanted our pace. Pre-COVID, you could literally make the event into a party, invite family, friends, decorate balloons. Tesla has an understanding that the vehicle is skewed to a younger demographic, and for many, it's very important because the Model 3 or Model Y is an aspirational purchase that, when achieved, is something that should be celebrated. And Tesla embraces this and makes the delivery of your first Tesla like a truly singular experience. A delivery experience is part of an indoctrination, however, but this is a good thing. It's not only to electric vehicle ownership, but also to the Tesla community. Tesla utilizes social media and Tesla owners to buoy its own support and reduce calls for assistance. You've seen this before. FCA, Fiat Chrysler, now known as Stellantis, their Jeep brand is kind of the industry leader in this community, where you have a vapid base of loyal Jeep owners ready to help out each other at a moment's notice. And Tesla's trying, or has achieved kind of that same level of community support. When you walk away from this overall experience, you really feel like you've bought into something special. And then we get to the ownership experience. So, like most EVs, whether it's the MachE or Chevy Bolt, they're motors. They're electric motors, and they have a lot of torque, right? And so Tesla has a lot of torque, just like all EVs, and it all is delivered as what's known in the auto industry as tip-in. This is the point of the accelerator pedal that initially travels the first millimeter or so. The result is that the vehicles feel very lively and almost attached to the driver. It doesn't matter what EV it is, even down to golf carts. It's almost as if the vehicle is an extension of the driver rather than the vehicle is something that the driver is sitting in. It's very compelling, and generally that's your first test drive is where you really kind of buy into it. The next thing is charging. This part causes a lot of consternation to potential EV buyers, and rightly so, right? It's a paradigm shift for the owner operator of the vehicle from internal combustion engine vehicles. That being said, the next generation of drivers likely not see charging as a barrier to adoption, as it's one of the many reasons that I'm so bullish on accelerated EV adoption. That being said, I've owned this vehicle, the one I currently have, for over a year, and I've never had range anxiety. I get approximately 280 miles per charge, but it's a difference, and I kind of want to do some math with everyone for a minute here. It takes, on average, 8 to 12 minutes to fuel up your car every single week, right? Sometimes longer if you go to like Costco. Every night I come in, I plug in. Every morning I have a full charge. I don't even think about it. Super easy. It takes zero time to do, and I never think twice. If you look at the time saving you get from that 12 to 8 to 12 minutes per week compared to no time at all, generally it's a huge saver, right? And it's a game changer because I never want to go to a gas station again. And that's one of the things that you really have to consider. It's a heuristic switch, right? So when people look at EVs, they base it upon their experience with internal combustion engines, but it's just not the same. You want, I'd say probably about the month mark, all your range anxiety goes away because you realize, like, if you do need to make a trip, there might be a little planning, but generally on a day-to-day basis, in modern EVs that get over 200 miles of range, you're never going to think about it again, and it's just a game changer. And then, of course, there's service. I haven't actually had to use service. I got my tires rotated once, I guess. Everything is done through the app. It's absolutely seamless. But other automobile manufacturers, including internal combustion engine automobile manufacturers, are going to this model. So that's going to be ubiquitous across the auto industry. But then there are the over-the-app updates, right? And this is a huge game changer, that all EVs being built, from now on, including those by Hyundai and Audi, they're going to do this. And the electric vehicle architecture allows this to happen, but it allows you to purchase new features and new capabilities that your car didn't have, which is truly amazing. More than one time, I've gotten an update over the air, and I've come back and I basically had a brand new car. I mean, at one point, I got over a half a second of acceleration added to my car, right? So now my car went from being, faster than a Mustang 5.0 to being faster than a Porsche 911, which is just absolutely mind-boggling. And I can tell you this from experience, you never, ever, ever get tired of that acceleration. It is fun every single time. And so the ownership experience overall has been fantastic. I encourage everyone to go out and test drive an electric vehicle. There are cost savings, there are obviously environmental benefits, but truly it's just a better vehicle. And at the end of the day, that's what you're looking at. I will caution everyone, like, don't go and sell your perfectly good vehicle to buy an EV. We want to be environmentally conscious, but at the next vehicle purchase, consider an EV, put in your selection set. I guarantee you won't be disappointed by it. And other than that, come and join the EV journey. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Drew. And thank you to all the other speakers as well. We've had a few questions come in. A couple of them have been handled through the chat. So I'll just kind of start going through those. We have about 4 minutes officially left, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. And I encourage you, if you have any more questions, please reach out to myself or Harley. And I'm sure some of the EV advocates here would be willing to share some more of their personal experience as well. First question that I got pinged into the chat, the federal EV tax credit seems to be phasing out. Is that because EV prices are dropping? No, so the way the legislation was passed is that it is actually by vehicle sales per auto manufacturer. So Tesla and GM have sold over the legislated 200,000 vehicles, which means they were phased out. But all of the other auto dealers still qualify until they reach that $200,000 threshold as well. So that's the current standard. There is some talk, depending on the next administration, and some policymakers are trying to get that changed. But as of now, that's kind of the standard we have. Another more general question about how much has current economic downturn impacted EV sales nationwide. Interestingly enough, when the pandemic first hit, EV sales actually were showing to be a little more resilient than gasoline vehicle sales. That hasn't held true for the year so far, but on average, it's looking like EV sales specifically are down around 20% compared to last year, which, considering a pandemic and everything that's going on in the world, not a terribly surprising situation. Here's a question from Timothy. Are there any initiatives for CoSA to prohibit gas vehicles from parking in public EV spots? Perhaps you can answer that, Harley.
Yeah, so as of right now, it's not really a citable offense. I'm sure you're familiar, the term in the industry is icing, when an internal combustion engine vehicle is taking up an EVSE spot. Another issue as well as that is not only ICE vehicles, but EV vehicles using those spots without charging. It's like the equivalent of you parking at a gas pump and then walking across the street to the movie theater. It's just not a very nice thing to do. Private property owners do have more kind of manageability on how they handle their lots, but there isn't anything citywide yet as far as enforcement.
I just wanted to add something to that. There's sort of an evolving methodology among EV users where you leave a note on somebody's car, a polite note, just to say, hey, if this spot is for EVs and I came and I couldn't use it, please don't park here. There's also a hierarchy of things that you want to do at these EV sites. If you're going to be finished charging, you want to come out and move your car so somebody else can use it, et cetera. So all that's evolving and will continue to evolve for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Another question, what is the approximate cost of setting up a charging station at a person's home? I touched on this a little bit in the presentation. Alan or Drew, do you have, and I think this is probably referring to level 2 stations since cars come with their own plug if you just want to use 110, but do either of you have level 2 stations installed? And
Yes. So
that?
I can add on this. We actually have a couple of programs that are being launched by CPS Energy that'll make it a lot more affordable. That being said, I live about 30 miles outside of the city, and I just use a 120. So I use a good old fashioned, rabbit ear plug with no problem. Plug in every night and get my miles back. That being said, it can run you anywhere from $250 to $500 depending upon the charger you want. With another $250 for a licensed electrician. If you have an NEMA 1450 plug in your garage, you don't really need to get one installed. Most chargers come with a dongle for the NEMA, actually all the NEMA plugs. So I know specifically both Chevy, General Motors, as well as Tesla offers adapters for all those. So depending upon what your setup is, you do a little research online. It's really very simple. If you're really not a technical person, there's plenty of places you can call to help. Feel free to reach out to CPS Energy. We'll point you in the right direction. But it depends upon your situation to get plugged. That being said, I will say, looking into the future, there's a lot of chargers coming along. A lot. I mean, there's one that's even 80 amps, which, by the way, is like the entire load that goes into the house. And I don't recommend that for everyone. No one needs that. And so kind of change your mind frame about how much you need to charge. Most people don't need a 240.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Alan, did you have anything to add to that? Or
I was able to add a NEMA 1450 to my system. I did that just in case I had friends visiting and they wanted to charge off my system as well. Integrating the level 2 charger into the inverter of the solar system has proven to be a wonderful thing for me. So I would say that my incremental cost for adding that charger was, I don't know, $50 or something like that. It was very small. And I put the NEMA 1450 in directly to the panel there. It was just the cost for the electrician to come do it, and I think it was a $30 for parts or something.
Great. Thanks for sharing your experience, guys. Okay, let's see. We're just over 11, so finish up with the last question. Here, if you have any others, share them, and we can probably follow up via email. How can a city department best take advantage of EVs? Harley, any insights on that?
Well, that's a big question. The Office of Sustainability has actually done a study recently that really nicely aligns up vehicles currently being used in a lot of city departments and what we think would be an efficient electric replacement. And that took into account everything from cost of the vehicle, how long it needs to charge, and the current vehicle market available. As technology advances, it's going to be a lot easier. There's a lot of different avenues we can go through as the city really looks further into also different purchasing options. So maybe as opposed to buying outright, we look more into leasing, which will make it a more affordable option for our department. And we always are trying to keep our finger on the pulse of different grants coming out and making sure that we roll out appropriate EVs with EVSE. So it really is the most efficient, economically, and environmental option that we can make while still performing the necessary job functions. So it's just looking at areas for improvement. If you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me at the Office of Sustainability. Each department has a sustainability liaison. So yeah, feel free to reach out and we'll try to hook you up with the correct resources.
Great, thank you. So we are over time. So there are a few questions that didn't get answered. So I think this is something we can visit in this follow-up email for a couple of the outstanding questions. I'll be working with Harley to get the presentations and recording for this shared out so you can share it with your colleagues or revisit it if you'd like. Other than that, that's all I have. Any of the other attendees or Harley, would you like to share anything?
Thank you all so much for coming, for taking time out of your day. I know it's a lot of people's lunch hour. We had a lot of attendees and a lot of interaction. I think this was great for the city, and I look forward to continuing the discussion.
Great. All right. If you have any questions, please reach out to me or Harley, and we'll help you out as best as we can. So thank you to the panelists, and enjoy the rest of your day.